The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. Austin FC has bought out Ulises Segura's contract. They have also unexpectedly signed a 19-year-old goalkeeper from Fulham named Damian Loss. They played a preseason friendly against Louisville City, which I watched from the Verde Hill. We're going to cover all of that, and then we're also going to play a little over-under game where we predict certain statistics for the 2022 season. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
So Jeremiah, at the preseason friendly the other day, media was not allowed into the training center, nor were fans. And so there was, I would say, between 80 and 100 fans out there standing on what has now been titled Verde Hill, which was first christened last year for one of the early games that was played at St. David's Performance Center. A lot of fans showed up then, and so kind of the same plan as last year. So there's a bunch of us out there. Have you ever been out to that hill?
I've seen the hill. I've never been out there when there were a bunch of people out there, but I noticed the hill was a lot more actually verde this year than it was.
Oh yeah, there was actually
season.
grass on it. I think they were standing in a bunch of dirt last time, but I was just gonna see if you could guess like how far away it is from the actual pitch they played on. But it's not close. I would say probably 100 yards, maybe a little over 100 yards from the actual pitch that they were playing on. So I had binoculars. Chris Bills had binoculars, was standing next to me, and we'll get into this game in a little bit. But I asked him a question while we were standing there, in between the halves, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about on the show. But who do you think is the best athlete on Austin FC's roster?
So do you have a definition of athlete? Is this like if Austin FC had a decathlon, who do we think would win it, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, like, what is an athlete? And that's kind of where I settled. It's like multiple events, like some type of, maybe not a decathlon, but like 5 track and field events at random. Who's most likely to be good at the most of them?
Well, I'm going to have another question for you, too. Did you see that video of Diego sinking like the 100-foot putt or whatever it was at Butler Park pitch and putt?
Yes.
And was this part of like thinking about what the answer to this might be?
No. Okay, so this
is golf a sport? I guess is another question, too, which we probably don't have time to get into.
This is an important part. So I'm not counting necessarily any skill in this. I'm talking about like physical ability, like speed and strength type abilities, not necessarily finesse or more like eye-hand coordination abilities.
Okay, I've delayed this long enough to say that Nick Lima would be my answer to that question, and partially because I still remember the like Verde Black podcast he did interview he did last year with Adrian Healy, where we talked about his potential to like play college football, and I figure he's the closest thing to a two-sport athlete that we have on the club.
He is also my answer. Nick Lima is my answer. He did play football and was actually being recruited to play college football, and then also ran track. He was like a mid-distance sprinter in high school, and I don't know if he's necessarily like the short distance quickest, but if there were a breakaway and you could choose one person to try to catch them, I would be choosing Nick Lima out of the whole roster here. Talking speed, this is Chris Bills brought this up, and I hadn't thought about this, but Ethan Finley may now be the fastest player on the team. I would be curious to see that race. Chris Bills also brought up Driussi, which I wasn't really throwing into that, but I would imagine he could hold his own. We don't get to see him like open up and just sprint as often as some of the defenders, right? But I could see him not being too low on that chart.
Yeah, things have probably gone wrong if he's doing that. And then, I mean, we've seen Johan Romagna make a run all the way down the length of the field, and it's a thing of beauty. I don't know if it was athletic, though. He
definitely wins the strength part of it. If shot put were one of the events, then he's definitely winning that one. But I I almost think maybe he's a little too slow to fit my metrics to be in like the top 3 there. But so the reason I was thinking about this is from what little I've seen of Gabrielson, I kind of think he could be competing for this spot. Maybe a larger sample size will make me think otherwise, and not just the few clips that I've seen so far. But he seems like a pretty strong and fast dude. So hopefully I am right about that. All right, you want to get into some Austin FC news, Jeremiah?
Yeah, let's cover some Austin FC news. And if anybody has any athletes that we've left out, feel free to let us know. And, Chris, if you were next to Bills, Chris might be the best. Well, I guess JoJo Shea is the best athlete among the sports media we know. But, I mean...
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think Chris looks like he's been working out a little bit, too, lately.
I know Chris is... I don't know if he's a good golfer. He plays a lot of golf, I know, though. I've never actually seen him do it, so I don't know if he's good. But I would guess he's probably pretty good.
Yeah, he probably is. So, okay, let's talk about Ulysses Segura. We could cue up some sad music about the greatest player that never was, which actually we have several options for that at this point. But he's my favorite of the guys who never played a game for us, I think.
Yeah, I think mine too. But yeah, Austin FC bought out his contract last week, kind of unexpectedly, right? I don't think anybody saw this coming. We kind of thought maybe there would be a move, like somebody being traded or sold, or maybe a buyout. But I don't know that Segura was one of the guys that anybody was expecting that to happen to. So I think we touched on this a couple of episodes ago, but MLS clubs have the ability to buy out one player per season. It now has to be during...
It's before the season starts. So it has to be before the season starts. Yep.
Okay, yeah. You can do it during the season, but they still count towards your budget charge. So if we do it before the season starts, then we actually get that cap space back. This money also comes out of, essentially comes out of Anthony Precourt's pocket. So we're not using any of that GAM that we got from some of these other trades or acquisitions. We didn't have to use any of that. This is Uncle Tony's money. So we do get, I think he was on 260,000 last season. So we'll get all of that cap space back and then be able to use that on another player. Why do we think this happened, Jeremiah? Is there any clues as to why this option was exercised?
Given, I think it has to be that he's just not recovered. He's not recovered from injury in time to be able to contribute at least early in the season. Did you read his... So I've mentioned this like every show now, but I've been doing a lot of Duolingo, but I could not read Ulysses Segura's goodbye letter. Did you check that post out? And was there anything in that sort of gave you clues about what the story might be?
No, I mean, it was like a pretty classy letter. It was just like thanking the fans and how much he enjoyed his time in Austin. There was one line saying although I've been fit since November, essentially. He said Alta America, essentially given the doctor's note that you can return to full activity. And so you could maybe read that as a slight at the club saying I've been fit since November. It's not that, but he's a professional athlete. So the dude wants to play and he's going to have a little bit of pride in that. But I thought the letter was really classy from him. I wish the guy well. Seems like a good dude. I'm really sad we didn't ever get to see him play, but these are the kinds of tough moves that good teams make. So hopefully it leads to good things for Austin FC.
Yeah, one of the reactions that I saw online during that week is why Segura and not Houston. Do you think the club really still believes in the future of Danny Houston, or do you think they're trying to get something out of him? What's your take on that?
I don't know. We don't know how long Houston's contract is, do we?
I don't believe we do.
So that may play into it. If he has maybe 2 more years, that ends up being a pretty big chunk of change to buy his contract out. Maybe they're looking at it as that they actually believe in Houston and want to give him a shot this season. It could also be that Segura was kind of, and he can play a few different positions, but wasn't really second in the depth chart at any of the positions of need. So maybe they thought they could by getting rid of him, they could replace him with a bit more of a specific skill set as opposed to a jack of all trades. And so I could see it being any of those things or a combination of all of those things.
Yeah, I could, that makes sense. I didn't think about the fact that Danny Houston's contract, back to this point about where the money comes from, like that's actual cash money that they would have to spend buying out whatever the rest of the deal is. That isn't just salary cap money. So that might be a factor too. So on the same day we got that news, we also got a guy in. Do you want to talk about Damian Loss?
Yeah, Damian Loss is a 19-year-old goalkeeper. He is most recently with Fulham's U23 team. I don't know that he got on the bench for a few first team games and had some games for the U23s, but was also a United States U17 player. I think was the starter for them at a U17 World Cup. The question here is like, we have 3 keepers. So like, what's the plan either for him or for one of the other 2 backup guys? Like, is Damian Loss going to be on this roster all season? And if he is, that likely means somebody else isn't going to be, right?
Yeah, you'd have to think. It seems very rare that a club's going to carry 4 keepers. And so Loss was he was in USL last year, right? Was he with North Carolina FC? So I can see him going back somewhere to USL since we don't have any affiliation. And he seems like a natural, whatever our league's called. I forget that we start the next year. MLS Next Ultra or
Next
Mega
Pro.
Or whatever. Next Pro. There you go. Yeah, like that seems like a good spot for him. But I'd have to think that he goes out this year. Since Pulisic didn't go down on loan last year, they re-signed him. I expect they plan on keeping him around as a third keeper, and they'll send out the young guy to try to get him some playing experience.
Yeah, that seems like the most logical option to me as well, because you could say, like, for accounting's sake, maybe send, like, either sell Tarbell or send him out on loan. But then do you trust Loss or Pulisic to be the number 2? If you don't, then keep Tarbell and then send one of these other guys. And then with Pulisic, like, is there any demand for him anywhere else? Whereas 19-year-old Loss, I think you could find a place where he can go and get some minutes, which would be amazing for a 19-year-old keeper to get some pro minutes under his belt before bringing him back to be that number 2 in a year or two. But yeah, I think that seems like a logical thing, but we've been surprised several times in the last few weeks, so who knows?
Yeah. And this is a very MLS thing too. He is now officially an Austin FC homegrown, I believe, because
correct.
Homegrown is wild, but the fact that it's like you could acquire somebody's homegrown rights is extra wild.
So this is worth covering or worth talking about. So Jeremiah, you did a little bit of digging, and it ended up being related to this Damian Loss thing. So you tell us about the thing you noticed during the Super Draft.
Oh, yeah, and I don't remember who it was. Somebody in Los Verdes noticed before the Super Draft, that there was, in the second round, it talked about Austin and Chicago having swap picks in the second round. And so I sent an email. But
it didn't say why.
And it didn't say why. It just said acquired in a trade. So I went through every MLS transaction thing I could find, and I'm like, maybe this is just like we finally reached the floor of transactions that like count as being announced. So I emailed Austin FC and I never heard back. And I guess now maybe we know why we never heard back, because the homegrown rights came via trade with Chicago Fire in exchange for a swap of the club's 2020 Super Draft selection. So we traded 2 spots down, I think. They traded 2 spots up, and we got the homegrown rights to Damian Loss out of the deal. But it was announced after the fact.
Also some conditional allocation money.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, conditional allocation money too. Yep.
So if he meets certain metrics, then we'll end up owing Chicago a little bit more money. But yeah, hopefully he's a good one for the future there. Has a pretty good pedigree so far, so look forward to seeing what his career turns into. He was out at the closed door friendly versus Louisville City. He did not get any minutes, but was out there suited up and was practicing with the team beforehand. So this one was a little bit of a strange one. We got out there right as they kicked off the game, and they did not play any like starting lineup and then second string. It was all kind of a mixed bag, but there were some surprises even within that mixed bag.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the format. So was it just 2 45-minute halves? Is that what it was?
I believe so.
Okay.
I didn't really track how long they actually were, but I think it was 2 45-minute halves. And Austin, at least, swapped out the entire 11 and made no subs for either half. And so there are guys who didn't go on. And I'm not sure if Louisville did the same thing. I know they had some guys that didn't play in the second one, but I wasn't really paying attention to them and don't really know who any of their players are. So
yeah, you would.
unclear.
Yeah, you wouldn't know. Yeah. Okay. So the first half lineup, we had Andrew Tarbell in goal, which is unsurprising. But talk about the back line.
Yeah, so it was Jimenez going from right to left. Jimenez, Keller, Romagna, and then at left back was Jon Gallagher. And did a little bit of a double take there and looked around. I was like, nope, this is what we're seeing. Jon Gallagher is playing left back in a back line of 4 people. Then in midfield was a double pivot of Alex Ring and Owen Wolf. Not super surprising there. Right wing was Rodney Redes. Diego was playing at the 10 in like that true like Driussi 10 spot, which was maybe a little bit telling for what they're thinking about him this year, or at least as a backup to Driussi there. And then left wing, second surprise of this one, was Charlie Asensio, who has played. I think he played 3 or 4 years at Clemson as only a left back.
Okay,
and he was playing left wing. And then Urruti up top as the striker.
Yeah, and then because I was like, this is just wrong, and people aren't paying attention, because I also went back. Somebody asked about Gallagher's defensive experience. I went back through like Transfer Market, and I couldn't find a time when he had played left back at all before.
I've never seen left back. He's played a lot of right back, and then in Scotland, I think he mostly played as a wing back, like in a back 5. He played as kind of like an attacking wing back, and then Atlanta United 2 played like right back and wing back there as well. So he has quite a bit of experience in a similar position, but not on the left side.
So do we think that this means that our fullback depth, at least at this point, at least starting the season, is Jon Gallagher? Is that where it's coming from?
I think maybe they're going to try to figure that out. But I wasn't necessarily surprised to see him there, but I thought it was weird to see him and Asensio on at the same time, but not playing where you would expect them to. And so, like, I don't know if they just wanted to get Asensio on the field and just to see what he could do, and give Gallagher a run out there, but they're at least testing it. And so I don't, maybe we see both of them on the final roster, since Gallagher can play in a few other spots, but we do need depth at that spot. I would be a little bit nervous, like, with going into it as Jon Gallagher as the only depth. But if we signed both of those guys, if Asensio ends up looking okay in preseason and we sign both of them and Gallagher is an option at left back, I would be okay with that. But it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, and to Wellhausen's point last week, it really gets scary in terms of if injuries start happening. Like, you're good,
right? You're
good with Hector playing both sides as like your first option off the bench, but that only is as good as everybody's healthy and playing.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll mention here is that it was like a more of a true double pivot with Ring and Wolf both kind of staying and going at times, with Wolf tending to sit a little bit deeper, but Ring getting up into the attack pretty often. So it does seem like they're at least working on that for now. I mean, I don't think we can take a lot about any of this tactically, because I imagine they're being pretty experimental here. But yeah, we did see Ring getting a bit more forward and not really playing just that single pivot 6 like we did a lot earlier in the season last year. The second half, like I said, complete line change. We saw Brad Stuver in goal. Back line was Nick Lima, Cascante, Kleeman, Kolmanich. Double pivot of Danny Pereira, and the third surprise here was a guy that I noticed warming up in between the two halves. I was like, who is number 22 warming up here? And started looking up, and I remembered that rumor on Twitter last week that I think since he posted on Twitter, but it was Felipe Martins, who was most recently a DC United player. And he was the other side of that double pivot with Danny, and scored the only goal for Austin FC in that game. And then the rest of that lineup was Driussi at the 10, and then Stroud on the right, GT up top, Cecilio on the left. So Um, this is the second year in a row where the first ever goal comes from a guy who's not actually on the team. And I think we talked about this. Do you remember who it was last year?
I do remember who. I remember it was Luis Argudo last year that scored the first goal.
Who did not end up on the team.
Right. Yeah, there's both of the trialists. And I wonder, obviously, Martins has a lot more skins on the wall in terms of being an MLS player, but I think one of the things that we theorized last year about Argudo not signing is he probably wanted more money than Austin was willing to pay. And I wonder in some way, like, that's what we're trying to figure out this year. It's like, does Martins provide enough value to give him what he wants? I think we're going to get into him to maybe a little bit more later. But do you have any? You talked about how far you were from the hill. Do you have any like reaction to what you saw?
I mean, like I said, I don't think we can take anything away from this because it's A, super early and the guys are all rusty, and B, they're probably just throwing stuff at the wall right now or trying out some like pretty experimental things. But I did see one thing I did notice tactically that was interesting to me is that Cecilio was really stretching the back line quite a bit and was running in behind and getting balls in from either the midfield or even like directly from Cascante or directly. Yeah, who was on the field at that point?
It was Cascante and Kleeman in the middle. Yeah.
So like Cascante a few times played directly from the back, a ball over the top to Cecilio running in behind, which we saw a lot of our wings moving inside last year, right? So if you looked at like average positions at the end of a game, Diego from the right wing, you would have guessed he was playing as a 10, right? Average position was like right in the middle of the field pretty often. Same for Cecilio, was pretty far inside, and they were both staying quite wide and making runs in behind. So the front three, like the forward and both wings, were staying wide and pushing high and like really stretching the line, which is a little bit different look than we saw a lot of times last year.
And we think basically these are the top 22 guys that we have in camp right now, more or less. Like none of the real trialists, you know, the guys that they announced along with the preseason signing played. Obviously, we still have two people out of the country, and we have two that did not suit up. So we should probably talk about those because we know a little bit about one and nothing about the other.
Yeah. So touching quickly on the trialists, I think there was only one that I just like didn't see at all, and I think it was Milan Iloski. He might have been hiding somewhere in the group, but I don't know that I saw him at all. Did see Michael Knapp, Dylan Powers, and who I believe was Petkovic. I believe I saw him there, and maybe I'm missing someone, but they were all there warming up and hanging out on the side. None of them saw minutes. So the only real trialists that saw minutes were Asensio and Martins. And so, yeah, going forward to the other guys who weren't there were Danny Houston and Ethan Finley were nowhere to be seen. Chris Bills has reported that Danny Houston is still kind of working back from fitness, and maybe they just didn't want to push him too hard too soon. Finley, we didn't really hear anything. We don't know why he wasn't there. Maybe something similar, just giving him a rest. Maybe he had a little knock from training, something like that. But he wasn't out there.
And then we didn't find anything else about that, right? Because Josh, there's not been a media availability this week, has there? There was one last week. They did like their first very live in-person thing, I think on Tuesday when the show came out, but I haven't seen anything about a press conference or anything this week.
No, I think that's still the only thing that's happened so far.
All right. Anything else you want to say about the experience or hanging out on the hill or watching soccer through binoculars from 100 yards away and not overreacting to it? Since last week we said we wouldn't overreact to everything we saw.
Yeah. I really didn't like. I was like into it and like excited to be there, but like I really was like, okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it was a lot of fun. It kind of like it felt like the old days where everything was like fun and exciting and kind of rough because nothing was done yet, and so it was a little bit of a throwback, but it was a lot of fun. Let's go back to Felipe Martins. You want to tell us a little bit about his background?
Yeah, so Felipe Martins, he's a 31-year-old Brazilian midfielder. He holds a green card, so if we do sign him, he would not occupy the, I believe, one international spot we have left. He's played about 280 MLS matches over the last 10 years, scored 25 goals. He's had an interesting... He's played for 4 clubs in Major League Soccer, starting with the Montreal Impact. He was a free agent last year, most recently with DC United. We kind of learned, as you pointed out earlier, I think FC Cincinnati maybe was looking at him or had an angle on him. And so the news we saw originally was that it appeared he was headed there. But then the Cincinnati media reported that he was most likely coming to Austin, which obviously happened.
Yeah, so he was on $150,000 last year, which if he's 31 years old and a free agent, you would imagine you could get him for that or lower at this point. And my favorite fact that I found out about him, I'm not super familiar with his playing style, but last year during the pandemic, the Extra Time podcast was doing just kind of a bunch of games. Actually, maybe this was preseason, maybe in 2021, not at the beginning of the pandemic, but they did an all-time most hated 11 for MLS, and Felipe Martins made this list. So he's in the criteria was guys you love to have on your team but hate to have as an opponent. And so he's a mean dude on the field, and we saw that some in this game the other day. He took a few dudes out and got retaliated on a few times, but we'll get lots of fouls, lots of cards. We'll take dudes down and kind of be that bully in the midfield, which is something that Austin needs, right? We talked about needing some of that defensive bite that we're hoping Valencia is going to bring. We also need a guy just to kind of be an asshole sometimes. And I think we didn't really have much of that on the team at all. And I wouldn't be sad to see this guy sign just to have a little more bite in the midfield.
Yeah, I remember last year going into the season, this is one of the things that you were really hoping that we would get is like our own asshole that we never got.
Yeah.
And I guess I got a little, this is really more of an Alex Ring kind of way, but did you listen to the KVU interview with Gabrielson?
Yes, I did.
Because I got a little bit of that at him too, that he's just like going to do whatever it takes to win. And he's like, because I think he even said, like, I mean, sometimes you got to cheat, to get away, to get what you want. And so I feel like bringing that extra bite in the midfield is probably a really good thing from both of those guys.
Yeah, fighters is never a bad thing to have on your team for sure.
So the next time that we're going to see the first team in action will be February 9th versus Toronto, and that will also be at St. David's Performance Center. So I would imagine there will be a return to Verde Hill. I don't know if we know a time for that one yet. One thing I was going to mention is that you talked about how it was closed to the public and closed the media, but I feel like it was very much a wink and a nod kind of close, right? Like, I think the team even eventually it was very well known when the game was going to be, I don't think anything was like through official channels, but it seemed like they were not really trying to hide it other than just kind of keeping people outside the fence.
No, to give you an idea of how much they didn't mind us being there. At one point, the security guard drove past on a golf cart and was like pumping up the crowd. And so they definitely didn't seem to mind us being there. I don't know if they wanted us having binoculars and looking at who their trialists were that they haven't announced yet, but they should build bigger walls if they don't want us looking at that.
Yeah, and I think they said that the team came over after the match, and I'm pretty sure we saw like from the official Twitter account and things like that, like the crowd. So they enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, that's an endorsement by my book. Also, there's been billboards saying that Verde is beer showers is one of the ones that we've seen. So one. Again, endorsed by the club. Keep doing it, guys.
I love it. So before that match on the 9th, we have sort of an exciting academy match opportunity, and that is this Saturday the 5th at 3 p.m. We mentioned this last week on the show, but we got some more details. The U17s are going to play FC Dallas. Tickets are free and open to the public. They ask you to RSVP, and so we can put a link to it. But I can't imagine it's going to be like a really hard you haven't.
I would imagine they're just trying to get an idea of how many people are going to come out. But if you go to like Austin FC social media or probably even on their website, you'd be able to find that RSVP link. But yeah, it's going to be next to that new development called The Pitch, which is going to be selling food and drinks and stuff. Do you know if you can buy food and drinks and take it into the stadium?
I don't know that. That's a really good question. I know that pitch is going to open up like 90 minutes before the match starts, and I would hope so. I mean, it seems like that's the concession for that field, probably, right? I can't imagine they built anything else in, but yeah, it's going to open up 90 minutes before, so it'll be 1:30. We also found out the match is going to be at 3, because I think last week we thought it was going to be at 1. So that'll be open at 1:30, and they have food and drink specials and stuff like that. And I think some of the supporters are planning on tailgating starting maybe as soon as noon. And a lot of people I've talked to are planning on going and seems excited. Like, I think it'll be a big crowd, and I think it'll be really fun.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be a decent crowd too. Do you know, like, do you have we're going to do some over-unders later. Would you say over-under, what number should we set this at? 300 people.
Oh, way over.
All right.
I would like to see, yeah, I'm going to go over 500 people.
Okay. All right. The Academy games that I have gone to, it's been probably like 30 to 60, depending on how many visiting parents are there.
Yeah, but the club's never emailed people to invite them to it or put it on the website or anything like that. So
yeah,
I like that. Hey, one other thing, this is super quick, but I noticed on the website they've started publishing almost every press release in both English and Spanish, which I think is cool. I think the Academy one was there.
Great.
The Gabrielson was there. I was reading the website today, so good on them for that.
What else we got, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I just have one more thing I want to talk about for sure before we hit the break and we do a little over-under, and that is Tomas Pochettino's preseason start for Reber. What do we think about that? What should fans think about that? You know, people seem really worked up about it, and it seems like the wolf out crowd has already latched onto it. And I have a feel like you probably have a more reasonable and thoughtful take on what to expect out of, 3 preseason matches so far, I think?
Yeah, I mean, it's preseason matches against teams who, like, I think the last one was against, like, the 18th place team from last year's season. I did see a video of one of his, I don't think he got the direct assist, but had a really nice pass, like, to lead up to the assist, like the hockey/MLS assist. I mean, I don't think we should be surprised. Nobody ever thought he was bad. I guess I didn't. Like, we didn't think he was bad at soccer. He was just not fitting into the system and wasn't happy with where he was playing, or wasn't willing to be flexible enough to learn how to play a different way or fit into a different system. And so, again, like, good for him, man. Like, it wasn't going to work here. And so I don't think it means like, oh, we made a mistake or we should have kept him. Like, it wasn't going to work. So let's send him somewhere else and make some money off of him.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's what I was going to say, is we should want him to be incredibly successful in South America this year, because the better he is, the more Garber bucks we get for him to redeploy into the team next year.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned the Wolf out crowd saying like, well, like Wolf was just misusing him, and like maybe a little, but also like the coach shouldn't change his entire system and his entire plan based on one player. Like, players need to meet coaches halfway and be a little bit flexible. And he was played in several spots and just never really made anything happen. So probably a little column A, a little column B. He also seemed just kind of like a Leo Messi type, like not like kind of a homebody, wasn't super outgoing. Probably like never met him personally, just based on his personality. Probably didn't seem to me like the guy who's like excited to move to another country necessarily. Probably prefers to be close to home. And so I could imagine he's just happier being back in Argentina too. All right. Anything else before we move on to our over-under game, Jeremiah?
No, let's get into over-under. You want to set it up before we go to the break?
Yeah, let's do it. So we have Marcelo Tezon 100% to thank for this. He was posting these in the Los Verdes Slack the other day and then sent them to me in a message and said, hey, if you want to use these on the show, like, go for it. You have my blessing. And I was like, well, this is amazing. We don't have to do any research at all for it. But yeah, we're going to just set up some scenarios, pick a stat, and then say whether we think it will be that specific stat or figure will be higher or lower at the end of the season. And then we'll need to set a reminder to actually go back and check these at the end of the season. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with that game.
Is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And it's also the firm that we would love to officially welcome back as our 2022 Moon Tower Soccer title sponsor. They're wonderful people. Apparently they like what we do for whatever reason, and we're happy to keep working with them throughout the entire season this year too.
And we were on a call with them the other day, and they were telling us about filming a new spot that's going to be showing at the stadium. And we're not going to give anything away, but it sounds really cool. So I'm excited to see it for that opening match at Q2. You can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law. All right, we are back. It is time for Marcelo Teson's Austin FC over-under game, which is the name that I just made up on the spot here. So the way this is going to work is I'll read like the prompt, and then Marcelo had some like further descriptions or justifications for certain parts of these. So I'll read through all of that and then give the figure, the over-under figure, and then we're going to say whether or not we think it's going to be more or less than that. So first one here, starts by Musa Jite, and this one's set at 17.5.
Is that
what do you think, Jeremiah?
So this is more than... It's not quite half the season then, is that right?
Under 17 would be under, and that would be half the season. And
then over would be over. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to go under on this one.
All right. What's your reasoning there?
Well, I think when you look at... I expect Maxi Urruti to start the first game at least. And I think if you look at having two veteran MLS presences, and I'm not 100% sold on Musa Jite as a finished player right now too, I guess is my biggest thing. Like, there's potential there, but he scored one goal last year, and we have other options, so I can see him not starting as many games as we would hope he would.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. I have under here as well. I'm not, like you said, not sold on him being a finished product, and we have options this year, right? So if he's not doing it, then we'll give Urruti a shot, and if he's not doing it, we'll give Houston a shot. So I also could see, even if he is playing okay, I could see Wolf maybe taking like the horses for courses approach, and for certain opponents or for certain tactical game plans, using one guy or another based on what he wants to do. So even if both of them are doing okay, maybe one gets to start just for tactical reasons. And then also you have to think of injuries, like guys get injured, so maybe he'll miss a few games with that. But yeah, both going under there. Next one is total season minutes, not including preseason, played by Danny Houston. And this one is set at 299.5. So
do you want to give the
over or under?
Do you want to give the context for that, I guess?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, Marcelo says he had 311 minutes last season as the main striker until he was pulled and didn't play again. Now he's possibly third in line. So how much does he play? So we're gonna alternate these, so you don't have to go first every time. So I'll go first.
Okay, go first.
I'm gonna say over on this one. Partially for the same reason as above. Like, I don't know, like I could see Wolf kind of playing with that lineup, and you see injuries, and it's a long season, so I could see him getting more than that. So like a best case scenario, I think he'll get a fair amount of minutes just out of rotation, and a worst case scenario, the other two guys aren't working out and Wolf starts throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Oh yeah. Well, it'll be like, that'll be part of Wolf's laugh stand if he's throwing spaghetti at the wall with Danny Houston. I'm gonna be hopeful for the club and not Danny Houston and go with under.
All right.
I'm gonna go with under, just thinking that the Urruti Jite rotation, those two guys are enough different players that they'll find some level of success, and we won't see a ton of Danny Houston on the field. And I think back to right before the year before we signed Schoenfeld, he played like 7 games or something for somebody, and like I imagine a world where that's what we see is like 7 or 8 appearances from Houston for hopefully under 300 total minutes.
All right. Next one is also striker related. This is shots taken by Maxi Urruti. So in 2021, he took 78 shots for Houston. Will he be allowed to take as many shots this year? And Jeremiah, you're first. You have the, did I say, yeah, I said the number 69.5, right?
69.5.
Okay. You have the over or under, Jeremiah?
I'm going to go under. I think we're going to see a lot of minutes from a lot of guys, and I can't imagine Josh Wolf being okay with that many shots being taken by a single guy. Like, I feel like the way we play will limit the number of shots that he takes.
Yeah, I have under here as well. And like tactics aside, last season he played in 30 matches and started 25 matches and ended up with 2,243 minutes. I don't think he's going to get 25 starts this year. So I think for that reason alone, he's going to see fewer minutes, which will almost certainly lead to fewer shots. And so, yeah, I have the under on that one as well. Next one is goals by Rodney Redes in any game, including preseason and friendlies. This one is set at 3.5. So Marcelo says, now that he's healthy and has had a year to get used to things, does he awaken this year? I'm first here. I'm going to say over, but only because we're counting preseason and friendlies.
I'm going to agree with you. I would put, I think the more interesting thing would be like over under. What 1.5 would be between 1 and 2 regular season goals, maybe. But yeah, I can see between. I mean, he scored goals in preseason before. We don't know what friendly is going to look like, but yeah, I would go over 3.5 with him here too.
All right, the next one we have here is regular season games in which Brad Stuver is not the goalkeeper. Last year, for reference, he missed one regular season game and played in 33. You're up first, Jeremiah.
I'm going to go under. I think we have a season just like last year.
All right. I am going to say over. So looking back at 2021, there's only 8 keepers in the entire league that played 30 or more games. I think last season was an anomaly in more than one way for Brad Stuver. You have to imagine there's always a possibility for injuries or cards or whatever. And so I think he's going to miss more than it's not unthinkable that he misses 3 games this year. All right. Next one up is players called up from the academy in any competition or friendly. And this one is set at 1.5. And so where Marcelo is assuming here that Owen Wolf will have at least one appearance. I think that's highly likely. So the question really is, will anybody else see minutes either in a friendly or in a competitive match aside from Owen, Teen, Wolf?
So I think this one's you first, right? I just did Stuver.
Yes, I am first. So I'm going to say over on this one. Primarily because I think Micah Burton will probably get a homegrown contract this year. He's been called up to 2 U17 national team camps. We saw some photos of 5 or 6 guys from the U17 team practicing with the first team. So I think at least Micah will get a homegrown contract, if not 1 or 2 other guys from that team. And so you would think if they get that contract, they might get thrown into the end of some game that maybe doesn't matter after a certain point. Either we're winning or losing some game where we're a little bit thin, or maybe like a US Open Cup game or a friendly or something that happens later on. So I do think at least one other player will see some minutes aside from Owen Wolf.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think for the same reasons you stated, we will see those. And I think so. The question I was going to ask is, do we expect what is your belief on whether we will have an in-season friendly like we had last year too? Because like these last few are dependent upon having like a T-Grace where Rodney gets to score and Owen Wolf gets to play. And that seems kind of rare, but I don't know.
You would think with the Open Cup happening this year that it would be pretty unlikely that we would just play a random friendly in the middle of the season again. Plus, like last season, we didn't have a stadium to play a friendly in, or maybe we would have done it before the season started. kind of like we're doing this year. But it seemed weird to have it in the middle of the season, and seems even weirder this year to do it in the middle of the season. So I don't know that we'll see it again. All right, next one is, this one was interesting. I kind of had a hard time with this one, but this is soccer games hosted at Q2 that do not feature Austin FC. So we hosted 3 last year, all being men's and women's national team games. How many and so this one's set at 2.5. So how many do we think we're going to see this year? You over or under on that one?
I'm going to go under. I think we might see the women, and I don't know that we would have other teams. I mean, we can see the women. Wait, yeah, I'll still go with under. I think we get like a Liga MX game too of some sort.
Yeah, I agree. I went under. So there was rumors of one that was supposed to be held already and got canceled because of COVID. And I think it was Tigres, and this one's for you, Marcelo, just because you made this game for us. But Tigres and River, were those the teams that were supposed to be involved in that?
That was always the rumor. I mean, okay. I don't know anybody how solid that was, but that's what it was.
But ended up not happening, reportedly due to like COVID things and just not being worth the risk. But you would think like something like that, with all the leagues being in season, probably isn't going to happen. You could see maybe like an international friendly coming here, and then maybe the women playing a game here. But with as many national team games that happened in 2021, maybe they're going to share the love and not do 2 here again. So yeah, I think 2 at most, but probably not more than that. All right, next one starts by Julio Cascante in the regular season. This one's set at 9.5. So Marcelo says, with Gabrielson and Romagna theoretically in the starting line, how many times does Cascante start in relief? So I'll start this one. I'm going to say over on this one. I do have Romagna and Gabrielson as my starters, but it's a long season. People get cards, people get injured. We have midweek games. I think Cascante will start at least 10 games.
I'll agree. And I would add on to much of the consternation of the Cascante out crowd that I think that Josh Wolf sees something in Julio Cascante that he's going to, beyond those situations, he's going to play him more than maybe some people would like to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, next one. Red cards issued to Alex Ring. This one's set at 1.5. And so Marcelo says, will he calm down? He had never had a red before last season. Will playing the 8 instead of the 6 help with this? Jeremiah, what do you have?
I'm going to go under. I think
under 1.5.
Under 1.5. I think he might pick up. I'll go between 0 and 1.
Yeah, I have the under here as well. I think Alex was in a little bit of a bad place last year. Just needed to work some frustrations out. I think he's going to do better in 2022. So I'm going under. Next one, appearances by Kip Keller. This one is set at 9.5. So Marcelo says, Danny Pereira played 25 games for Austin FC. Will Keller appear in fewer than half that many? So I'm first here. I'm going to go over 9.5. I looked back at some like high pick defenders from the Super Draft, and a lot of them. So just for a few examples, João Moutinho, Jack Marr, Henry Kessler, Alistair Johnson all had way more than 10. And so I would imagine, again, for the same reasons why I think Cascante is going to start more than 10 games, I think Keller will get more than 10 appearances.
All right, I'm going to go under. I feel like the trust in the first 3 center backs is very high, and I think that it's just, I don't know. I mean, if you're 4 center back, hopefully it doesn't start a lot of matches unless something's going wrong. But what does this mean for Freddie Kleeman?
I don't know. That's
especially in your when you're playing Cascante and Keller both more than 10 times. There's not a lot of extra minutes left for our boy Freddie.
Yeah, and that's a big question. If Keller ends up being the real deal, like at least a real enough of a deal to be on the roster and be getting minutes, do we see Kleeman go back out on loan like he was supposed to do last season?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for him because you don't need him being your why re-sign him to be your fifth center back? You know, why not send him out and get him some experience? Because anybody could do that.
Yeah. Next one is also center back related. This one is goals by Johan Romagna, and this one is set at 0.5. Marcelo says the fans are clamoring for it. Will he get one though? Jeremiah, you're up first.
I will go over, and it will not be a lumbering like when he plays number 10 or whatever he's playing like in the run of play. But I mean, he's a big old boy. At some point, he's going to score off of a set piece, which I guess is maybe going to tie into this next question now that I look at it. But he just seems like the kind of guy that should be able to once a year muscle everybody and get a ball on his head and get it into the net.
Yeah, I'm going over, but I'm giving it no logic. I just want it to happen bad enough that I'm going to say over. All right, next one is goals scored by Austin FC from crosses into the box, including corners and free kicks. This one is set at 7.5. So Marcelo says, at one point, the striker did an analysis of where the goals were coming from and found that about halfway through the season, only 2 of Austin's 13 goals were from crosses and only 1 from a set piece. Multiply that ratio by 35 to get total goals the entire season, and you get 8 total goals. So the line is set at 7.5. We cross a lot. Will we get better at finishing? I'm up first here, so 7.5. I'm going to say over. Reasoning being that this season we have real strikers. We don't know how good they're going to do, but they are real strikers who have played striker their whole life. So I think that plus Cecilio playing consistently on the wing and having Ethan Finley in the team playing some minutes. He puts in some pretty clever crosses sometimes. I think those things combined are going to give us more than 7.5 goals from crosses or corners.
I'll agree with you on that one. I don't really have anything to add beyond that. I mean, I think last year was an anomaly on that front, just almost historically bad. So I think that we can do nothing but improve here. And what did we talk about? Was that last week we were talking about just like goals from strikers, period? Yeah. We talked about 2. Like we have to, we'll have to get like 10 or something. And some of those are going to be crosses into the box.
Yeah. Okay. Next one is goals against us that are the result of the defense giving up the ball while playing it out of the back. So goals caused by playing it out of the back, essentially. And this one's set at 3.5. Marcelo says, we had like half a dozen last year. Austin changed some of their out of the back strategy halfway through and it got better, so I set the line lower. I would define this as any goal the other team scores where we start playing it out of the back and it never reaches midfield and instead gets intercepted and shot into the net. This one's going to be a little more work to count at the end of the season.
This is going to be very subjective. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jeremiah, 3.5 over or under?
I'm still going to go over 3.5. I feel like we have games where we do it twice in a single match, and I don't see that disappearing completely. I mean, I hope we'll be better at it, but it just seems like that's one of the things that happens when you play this kind of system more often than we would like it to.
I'm going to say under here. Stuver did get smarter with it at the end of the season. And then the other day in the scrimmage, we saw him just like booting it long in times when maybe during the season last year, we would have seen him try to play it out. I think a lot of the stuff that we're thinking of as like errors from playing out of the back are things like in that Houston game when there was like a ball over the top that Julio got to and just tried to bring it down on his foot. Like, I wouldn't necessarily call that an error of playing it out of the back, but maybe we kind of group it into the same category of like center back or goalkeeper error. But I think it's going to be under. And again, this is very subjective, so we can argue about whether or not we actually got it right at the end of the season. But I'm going to say under.
So we're going to count it in whichever way. Each of us will count it in whichever way benefits our position on this. Basically, yeah. All right.
Exactly.
We can have Marcelo on to adjudicate it, maybe.
That would be perfect. Okay, next one is total combined season minutes, not preseason, played by current trialists. This one is set at 299.5. So last year, Marcelo says, last year we had to rely on trialists like Manny Perez, Mackenzie Gaines to fill in positions of desperation and need. Will we need to rely on them this year? will there be one breakout trialist star? This one is probably Marcelo sent these to me before the game the other day.
Yeah, we're gonna throw Martins out of this, right?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
I would say with Martins, because just what we saw the other day, I think he'll probably get a contract, and I think he'll probably play more than 300 minutes on his own. Without that, I think we will still probably see more than 300 minutes out of the other guys. So looking back at last year, Mackenzie Gaines and Aiden Stanley had over 500 just between the two of them. And so that's not counting, say, like Kakuta Mane, who I believe was just a trialist at one point. Several other guys who ended up playing some real minutes. If you just think like Charlie Asensio and one or two of the other guys who I think will probably get contracts, I think that's pretty easy to cover 300 minutes between two of those guys.
Yeah, I'll go over on that one too, and I hope it's not much over that, but
yeah,
I can see definitely time for, you know, Asensio's like may end up being needed, like really needed depth, as we talked about more than once. So definitely him, and so I can see more than that.
Yeah, hopefully we're not crying as we see him in lineups. I really hope he's good enough to do it. This one is also fullback related. Games in which Jon Gallagher plays left back or right back. And again, I think had this happened before the game the other day, Marcelo would have set this number a little higher. He said 1.5. That seems way too low now. Maybe we should reset it for ourselves.
Where do you want to reset
Let's
it?
say, let's set it at 6.5. Is that too low?
No, that's
7.5.
So go with 7.5.
Okay. 7.5 games. Jon Gallagher plays, not starts, but just plays left back or right back.
I was going to pull 8 out of the air, so that's why I like 7.5. So I'll go with over that number.
Yeah, I'm going to go. Well, okay, thinking not starting but playing, I'm going to say over as well. Again, just like rotations and injuries and things like that. If they're looking at him there now, I could see a reality where he ends up having to play some. So yeah, over. Next one, different Driussi hairstyles. This one is set at 2.5. So Marcelo says last year he had 2, which was a shaved side head / mohawk kind of thing, and then a very preppy combed over type thing. Since then, he has shaved his head.
I didn't like that, the second one, by the way.
Oh, no?
No, I don't know. I feel like the guy needs more flair, but go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I get that. What will he look like and how many times will that change? So I'm up first here at 2.5. I'm going to take the over here. So I think now we've seen like 3 different styles in just the 6 months that he's been here. The season is longer than 6 months. And so I'm going to extrapolate that out and say we're going to see at least 4 or 5.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we haven't. Has he colored his hair any?
I don't think so.
There's also that option too.
Oh yeah, we could
done
definitely see some bleach. We saw Rodney's got some like frosted tips going right now, so that's a definite possibility.
Yeah, and then Cecilio like went dark and then went back, if I remember right, already this offseason. Not Cecilio. Jesus. Diego.
Who? Oh,
yeah, Diego went dark and then went blonde again, I think.
Julio had some like blonde top to his hair the other day too, so maybe the whole team will do it. So that is the last of the game that Marcelo played. I added in an extra one here and didn't tell Jeremiah about it before. And so this is not necessarily a stat. We can actually know the answer already, but the average age of Austin's roster, and this is including Teen Wolf. So I'm going to set it at 25.5. Do you think the average age is higher than that or lower than that? This does not include trialists or anybody right now.
Okay.
It's like players with contracts and Owen Wolf.
I'm going to go with under 25.5.
That is correct. The answer is 25.3 according to Transfermarkt.
Ah. Yeah, so do you have any idea where that lines up, like in terms of the rest of the league? Like, is it a relatively young team? I don't feel like we don't have a lot of old guys.
Yeah, the reason I thought about that is because I think was Urruti signed after Finley?
Yeah.
I think it was whenever he got signed. I saw someone on Twitter complaining about like signing another guy over the age of 30. I was like, I don't think we have that many. And I counted it. I think it was like 5 or 6 guys over the age of 30, which seems low to me for an MLS team. I would imagine we're on the younger end, but I don't know what the actual answer is to that. We'll look it up and let y'all know next week.
Yeah, we'll tweet it or something. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again to Marcelo Teson. This was a lot of fun. Maybe we can kind of keep this theme going throughout the season and throw in a game every once in a while. If anybody else wants to do all of our research every once in a while,
yeah, that's amazing.
Just like throw us a show outline, then let us know, and we'll be happy to take you up on that. But anything else we need to cover here, Jeremiah?
No, I'm interested in what people think. I want to say like enter your own guesses to any of these that you like. Yeah, and if there are any other game type things that you'd like to hear or see us do, we don't do a ton of that, but we'd be up for it if people want to hear more of it. And it does make these weeks where we have some news but not a ton of news like easier to show plan for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We would like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And then if you want to continue the conversation, come find us on Twitter. I'm at elviajero87. Jeremiah is at jbentley_ATX. And then we're at Moon Tower Soccer, both on Twitter and Instagram. We'd also encourage you to visit the Striker Texas website. Jeremiah, what can folks find over there this week?
You can find Chris Bill's interview of Danny Houston, which I thought was interesting and led me to believe that maybe actually Danny does have some kind of future in Austin.
It made me feel kind of bad for the guy.
Oh, I know. It's when you treat him as a real person and not like as a Slack meme, then you do get a bit of a different impression about him for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll be back in 1 week with a new episode of Moon Tower Soccer. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Muchas gracias. Bye bye.